Welcome to On the Other Hand. In this video, a channel called Big Joel talks about Ben Shapiro and his take on Jon Lennon's song, Imagine.
So there's a YouTube video I love called Ben Shapiro Trashes Jon Lennon's Imagine.
Jon Lennon's Imagine is a monstrosity. It's a moral, musical monstrosity. It is the cave troll of all that is good and holy.
And before we really get into it, I think it's important to acknowledge how strange it is that this video exists in the first place, that Ben Shapiro had 10 minutes worth of stuff to say about the topic. Imagine is, at least to some extent, a communist manifesto. In a very generic way, it proposes that a godless, stateless, moneyless world would be a good thing. And considering the fact that Ben Shapiro is very much not a communist, it seems like his response to the song could be as simple as, "You know that ideology? I spend my life disagreeing with that." Since Lennon doesn't put any real work into arguing the song's thesis, Shapiro doesn't need to provide some lengthy response.
It's interesting that Big Joel acknowledges that Shapiro spends his life and profession disagreeing with ideas, but also seems surprised when Shapiro takes the time to disagree with this song. I could understand if Big Joel thinks the song isn't worth the time Shapiro puts into arguing it, but in other parts of Big Joel's video, he refers to the song as a masterpiece. It seems like a contradiction to me.
See, Shapiro isn't in the business of saying he disagrees with something and quietly moving on. Instead, he is deeply invested in the pageantry of online debate, in revealing that his opponents are not just wrong, but also wrong-headed, idiotic, shameful.
Big Joel then says that Shapiro is not, quote, in the business of disagreeing and quietly moving on, but is invested in the pageantry of online debate in revealing that his opponents are not just wrong, but wrong-headed. On the one hand, I feel like this is an accurate point to make, but on the other hand, I feel like Big Joel does the same thing.
Like, in the first moments of Imagine, Lennon talks about all the people in the world living for today, and that just sets Ben off.
What he just said is the most immoral thing you could possibly say. Imagine all the people living for today. That's basically what we have. Okay, imagine all the people living for today means you don't plan for the future. It means you don't care about your kids. It means you don't care what happens tomorrow. It means you don't care about anybody else. You just care about you. Okay, this is the most selfish morality possible. If all the people lived just for today, they would screw everything in sight and kill all their enemies.
It's hard to come up with something to say about this because it's just so incredibly and self-evidently ridiculous. Lennon isn't referring to today like these 24 hours, right? The stanza is about imagining if people didn't believe in an afterlife. In that case, they wouldn't count on and organize their lives around some unprovable reward, and would instead work to make the world a better place right now, like today, for instance.
Big Joel says Lennon isn't referring to the next 24 hours, but I would dare say Shapiro isn't either. Big Joel says, quote, "Imagine if people didn't believe in an afterlife. They wouldn't count on and organize their lives around an unprovable reward. Instead, work to make the world a better place right now." On the one hand, it seems Shapiro is addressing a selfish attitude and lifestyle of only living for today and not taking thought for the future. On the other hand, Big Joel seems to be arguing that without the belief in an afterlife, people would divert religious effort into making the present better. Both of these are interesting ideas, but I feel like they aren't inherently contradictory.
Or when Lennon says, "Imagine a world with nothing to kill or die for," Ben goes on this long thing about how, how about people harming kids? Isn't that worth killing or dying for?
There's nothing worth killing or dying for. Really, how about like the torture of children? Is that worth killing or dying for? How about the murder of 100 million people? Is that worth killing or dying for? Turns out that in your happy-dappy little land here, where everybody is just wonderful and joyous, this assumes a goodness to human nature that just does not exist.
And again, what? Looking at the context of the song, something Shapiro is strangely unwilling to do, Lennon isn't saying, what if nobody ever did anything wrong that required intervention? Rather, he's talking about countries here, the imposition of nationalism and the violence that it causes. It's not just a bland statement about how killing people is bad, and what if we didn't do it?
Big Joel references how Shapiro doesn't look into the context that, quote, Lennon is talking about countries here, the imposition of nationalism, and the violence that it causes. On the other hand, Big Joel seems to miss that Shapiro is probably referencing World War II, and how the Allied nations fought to end the genocide of the Jewish people. It seems like Shapiro is trying to point out that countries fighting can be a worthwhile cause, but Big Joel doesn't seem to look into the context of Shapiro's words. Ironic, I would say. Now here's my bias. I listen to Shapiro often and think he makes many good points. I also think he is often belligerent and goes too far in his own outrage for many things. That being said, I think this video bugs me because it seems hypocritical. If you want to critique a person or idea, it doesn't look good if you employ the same tactics you are decrying.
If I were making a movie where Ben Shapiro is the bad guy, I couldn't do a better job of it than this scene does. Because everything about it tells us that Jon Lennon is winning. The comments Ben Shapiro makes here are aggressively vacant and unnecessary.
He wraps up talking about how Shapiro's comments are aggressively vacant and unnecessary, and because of this, it is obvious that Jon Lennon is winning. This bugs me because it is a personal sentiment and seems more like an expression of personal belief rather than a moderator declaring a winner in a debate. Imagine discusses big ideas, and the ideas of any type should be studied and debated. For me, Big Joel declared many victories in this debate.
But he didn't say anything!
As always, thanks, hope you enjoyed.